I'm Greg Jaboski. I'm I'm here as I'm with Our Wisconsin Revolution. I'm the secretary of the Dane Chapter of OWR, and I'll be doing some questioning.
Great.
My name's Peter German. I'm the interim co-chair, he, him, his, and together we'll be conducting this interview today, sort of pairing off one and the other for questions. So let's kick this off here. Thank you for being here, by the way. So number one, do you support publicly funded elections, and then why or why not?
I 100% support publicly funded elections. Reason for it is this. This is a public service job, and we are public servants. Big money has to be out of politics. It's the only way we're ever going to get equal, equitable representation from individuals. And people are afraid to run because it's become cost prohibitive. Additionally, a lot of people feel they have to practically sell their soul to organizations and corporations to be able to get PAC money to be able to run. That's not the way things need to be done. We need to run, we need people with good ideas to run, not just people who have deep pockets.
Next question. Oh, I think we forgot to mention this at the beginning. We'll try to, we're not putting time limits on this, except we want to cap everything at about 50. It's great if it's a lot less, but for the top of about 50 minutes, 50.
Great.
I'll mention if it reaches, if there's a chance it'll reach that, I'll warn you. There's a chance it won't even do that. But okay.
That works.
All right. Do you favor extending the time frame to vote at the polls during elections to a minimum of 2 weeks ahead of the election date?
No. I believe we should have as much early voting as possible. To have a court decide 3 years after the question and make the decision 4 months before the election is absolutely irresponsible. I'm an attorney by trade. They had ages to make that decision. The only reason they made it the way they did was to disenfranchise voters. We need to give people as much time as possible to vote. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We need people registered for absentee ballots. We need people to have options so that they can vote by absentee. We've seen throughout the country that people with disabilities have had a hard time getting absentee ballots. In fact, in New York, a blind court justice had trouble getting a ballot, and in Philadelphia, a blind court justice wasn't able to vote. I mean, those kind of problems are unacceptable, and it causes disenfranchisement of the voter. So therefore, I believe that these time limits are arbitrary and only used for voter suppression. And I am fully against them.
Awesome. Oh yeah. And then sort of going along in a similar theme of voters in their districts, obviously, you know, especially in the state assembly, gerrymandering is a major problem.
Yeah.
And it's something that we really need to fix before we can move forward with a lot of our legislative agenda. So what model or plan do you prefer in regards to redistricting?
I don't believe in gerrymandering. I believe a redistricting plan. I kind of like the one that's out of Maryland, in which a bipartisan commission gives a set of names to the governor, and the governor chooses from that set of names, and the public has the way to weigh in on the individuals who are part of the committee. I want to get politics out of the decision of map making. Right now, we are making maps based on an individual from the 1700s who drew a map that looked like a salamander. We just call it a gerrymander. But very simply, that's not how we decide representation. We are leaving thousands of people out, disenfranchised, or have no voice. So I don't want Republicans or Democrats picking. I want the governor who's elected, but that his power is controlled through the bipartisan, independent, non-political committee who's making those choices with help from the public.
What are your top 3 legislative priorities, and what will you do to move them through the legislature?
Education will always be my top priority. Criminal justice being the second, and disability rights being the third. Education is my top priority because right now, if you can't learn, you can't get jobs. Right now in this state, we give millions to the charter school industry and the voucher school industry. Yet we rob public schools of their educational ability to teach as many as possible by limiting their funds. This needs to change. We also have to get rid of revenue caps and get rid of the funding formula that is inherently unfair. Criminal justice reform. I've been an attorney for 16 years. I've seen how cash bail has destroyed the criminal justice system. Seen how illegalizing drugs such as marijuana has become a racialized way of controlling individuals. It's the only crime in which a police officer has a choice between giving someone a warning, a ticket, or or advising them that they could be charged with a misdemeanor. No officer should have that kind of power. That power should be reserved for a jury and a judge, not an officer. And my third one is disability rights and getting rid of the sub-minimum wage. I'm the individual who asked Hillary Clinton on what she would do to get rid of the sub-minimum wage. I was the first person who ever asked a political candidate that in 2016. And it went viral and ended up in the New York Times. I'm an autistic adult. I was told when I graduated from law school, the best I could hope for, according to my disability counselor that was appointed by the state, the best I could hope for was $2 an hour at Goodwill, and I should be happy about it. And that opening my own law firm was a waste of time and a waste of money. I knew that was wrong, but how many people don't? How many people don't know they have the right to fight? So very simply, those individuals need representation. And right now, we need to make them we need them to be a priority in our legislation, not an afterthought.
Thank you. That'll bring us to let's see, number 5. So yeah, in the emergence from the pandemic, would you support state-level economic hardship payments? And then do you support that direct payments to residents? And then what would be your sort of top components that you think should be in such a bill?
And I'm going to mention here that in case you didn't know it, I'm putting the questions in the chat as well. So if some of the longer ones, you want to review them. Okay.
I've been reading them as you post them.
Okay.
Very, very simply, yes, I believe in economic hardship payments. We have individuals who can't afford to work because no one can watch their kids. No one can take care of their elderly. No one can make sure and make the accommodations. These are major issues. Our entire government, our entire small business are needing massive restructuring just to make things safe. But in this bill, I want belief that focus on public education and that private schools and voucher schools not be receiving public education dollars, number 1. Number 2, I want a small business bailout, not one that the LA Lakers can join, not one that Ruth Chris Steakhouse can apply for, ones that actually help the individual. And third and most important, I want people with disabilities protected in these bills. Currently, under the first stimulus bill that was passed under the Trump administration, IDEA, or the Disability Education Rights, under Betsy DeVos's choice, can be withheld for up to 1 year with only 30 days notice. Very few people know that provision is even in the bill, unless you read everything down to the fine print. So basically, people could determine whether or not the disabled have a right to get to education because they don't want to pay for it. Are we going backwards on the 30th anniversary of the ADA? I don't think so. I think that therefore it needs to be in those bills to specifically say that the right to education cannot and should not be based on whether or not you're physically, emotionally, or mentally able to attend by sitting in a classroom in a building.
Thank you. Next question. How will you guarantee housing to citizens? How will you deal with the financial situation of those facing eviction because of the pandemic? And what specific solutions would you propose?
On housing, I really like the model that unfortunately Wisconsin Supreme Court found unconstitutional many years ago, which was IZ zoning, industrialized IZ zoning, in which you had Section 8 individuals, 20% of the buildings could be reserved for Section 8 individuals and individuals with disabilities. In fact, that's how I got my first condo. It's the only way I could afford to live downtown, because I don't drive. Because at the time, disabled could only have $2,000 a month. So under those circumstances, I couldn't afford rent. But I couldn't afford the transportation to get to the courthouse to be able to do the job that I was trained to do. So that's first. Two, we need to focus on affordable housing. I don't mean the housing that of the luxury condos. I'm talking nice, safe, clean housing that is accessible, that is affordable, that isn't one of the boutique little hotels. And I don't believe in the carrot stick model. I believe in the carrot only model. Give tax breaks to companies that provide those accommodations and who focus on attracting individuals who are the ideal, as they call it, tenant. There is no ideal tenant. Additionally, what I'm very much for as well is that we need to provide subsidized rent. Right now, we have a system that doesn't work. We have a capitalist-based system based on economy with the assumption that everyone can do as they want based on what the economy has and what the economy gives. That's not doable for a large number of individuals. That's not doable for the majority of individuals with disabilities. It just isn't. Having subsidies for housing is a human right and a necessity. And we're seeing in COVID how necessary the right to housing and the right to health care are. And I believe those are rights. I don't believe those are options or choices. Economically, I would pay for it I want to tax those who make over $150,000 a year. I want to raise those tax rates. I want to raise them on businesses who make that much money, because you have to give back. No one person should be worth $1 billion. No one person needs to be funding the entire company, of course, but I mean, we have to diversify our money, and we're not doing it. We have to give it to the people and let the people decide. And right now, what we're doing is not acceptable. I think you're on mute, Peter.
Yes, thank you very much. Been a similar theme along this pandemic. Will you fight for a single-payer healthcare system at the state level? And then also, do you support federal single-payer healthcare system?
Absolutely. We need healthcare is a right. It's not a privilege. It's not a choice. It's a right. We need a single-payer healthcare, Medicare for all pay system. Plain and simple. And our government shouldn't get better healthcare than our people and than our average citizen. That's not okay. Very simply, we need to fight for health for all. I want medical coverage standard, vision standard. Dental is very big in the disability community because no doctor in the state of Wisconsin takes Badger because the payouts are so low. So the ability to see a dentist is incredibly difficult in the disability community, and that's an area that is often overlooked. Additionally, I want to provide mental health care. I want to get rid of the stigma. I want to treat it just like regular physical health care. And because of COVID, it's opened my eyes up to televisits and the need to them. I don't believe they should be a substitute for seeing a doctor, but I believe they should be covered just like any other doctor visit. I believe that no one should be bankrupted by medical bills. I had 10 surgeries before the age of 8 years old. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a college basketball coach, Division III. They didn't make a huge amount of money, but they had the money to fight for me. But what if I'm an only child? What about those who don't? What about those who are one of 4 kids? That's not okay. I was born with privilege. I think everyone should have that privilege. It shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right.
Will you pass workers' rights laws helping those who are forced to return to work but who risk infection from COVID-19?
Absolutely. I really despise under the unemployment that you chose not to return to work. You're not choosing that. Why should you have to choose between your health care and your employment? You are saying it is a choice to risk my life and the life of my family so that I can afford to put food on the table. That's a false equivalence if you've ever heard one. Very, very simply, that's not a choice. Additionally, we need to realize that people insurance must be separate from their job, because right now those who can't afford to stay home and not be able to work can't afford the health care. The problem being is we're all affected by this disorder, every single one of us. So if one of us doesn't have insurance, we all might as well not, because we still pass it on. Everyone is connected in the society and we still have contact. We truly want to end this pandemic to provide health care for everyone, not for the select few.
I'll ask that second part in case you
I missed it.
Okay, yeah, absent the equivalent of a single payer system, will you push the state to guarantee medical coverage through Badger Care for those affected in this way?
Absolutely. I believe Badger Care should be for all to begin with, but absolutely they need payments for those who are forced to go back to work, because their rights, their lives, their livelihoods, and the livelihoods of their families are all dependent on that. And our state has to, one, take the federal Medicare money. We need to me, that's a no-brainer, but at the very least, we need to make Badger Care for all, because our people are suffering without
it. Thank you very much. And then the next question is like a kind of a lightning round with Campaign Zero. We have a couple of policies here, and you can just indicate whether you support them or not, and then yeah. All right, so number one, do you support the propositions outlined in Campaign Zero, which includes ending broken windows policing?
Absolutely.
More community oversight over police officers?
Absolutely, and voted against police in schools every time it came in front of me on the school board.
Limiting use of force?
Absolutely.
Independent investigation and prosecution of officers?
Yes, must happen, otherwise there's no point in having it.
And then community representation in these investigations?
Absolutely. If we don't have the community involved, then very simply their voices are kept out of the system.
And then more body cams and filming the police officers?
Yes, but I want a storage system for that body cam footage.
And then more training?
Absolutely. I want training. I also want training in neurodiversity. I want training in disabilities and how to handle nonverbal individuals.
Ending for-profit policing?
Absolutely. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to the criminal justice system.
And then demilitarization?
Absolutely. Why are we fighting a war against our own people?
Awesome.
Yep. And now some more questions related to policing. The answer to this is a fill in the blank. I will support what kind of funding for the police? I'll support increasing funding for the police, leveling funding for the police, decreasing funding for the police, and eliminating funding for the police.
I want to decrease and move towards elimination.
A police officer in your jurisdiction, as you include when you're in the state jurisdiction, has been filmed killing someone. They have stopped or arrested. How do you respond?
Very simply, they're immediately removed from duty, put on unpaid leave, and if it is shown to be an unacceptable use of force, then they are immediately terminated.
And do you have any other propositions regarding policing that you'll fight for?
Yes, I very, very much believe one on training that on the disability training on disabilities which I had mentioned before, that I will fight for. Additionally, I believe police pensions can be overly generous, and you have to look at the situation. I think if you have an incredible excessive force record, that should be reflected in your pension.
Awesome. And then the next question is a little bit more of a personal one.
Yep.
So who did you support in the Democratic Party presidential primary this year?
By the time it happened, who I originally wanted was Elizabeth Warren. By the time it happened, I voted for Joe Biden because Bernie had already pulled out at that point.
Awesome. And then do you care to like sort of explain why?
The reason why, as an attorney, I was attracted to the attorney versus attorney thing. I additionally liked her role on getting more women involved in political office. Bernie was my second choice and a very close second. Biden was my third. Unfortunately, Wisconsin has a late primary, which meant by the time I got a chance to vote, Biden was the only option, unless I wanted to vote outside the party. Unfortunately, with Trump, I'm not going to take that chance. Not in a primary, not in a general election. I have to vote in a way that I respect. And I can't give a third party at that time. I'm not anti-third party, but at that particular time with what we had at stake. If I could, if Bernie was still in, I would have gone for him, but he was not. Therefore, I went for Biden.
What's your analysis of the Evers administration's handling of the COVID-19 crisis in Wisconsin, including its handling of the process leading up to the April 7th election, and the same thing on the state legislature's role?
Very simply, on the state legislator's role, which I'd like to start with first, I find it absolutely abysmal. We held an open election in the middle of the pandemic because our legislature would not work with our sitting governor and put thousands of lives at risk. I'm almost ashamed to have been on that ballot because I had to tell people who were immune compromised to either do absentee or don't vote for me because I didn't want them to risk their health. No one should have to choose between their health and voting. And I'm still, as you can tell by my voice, very, very angry about that choice. The number of disabled individuals who died from COVID is massive. Just lost a friend last week, Miss Bella Soba, from this disorder. And from COVID, she had muscular dystrophy. And it's still an incredibly hard thing to deal with. The other thing that I think on Tony Evers, I think he's trying, but I need more work, not just with small business, but with direct policies. I understand the Republicans may challenge it. I understand there may be court pressure and there may be court rulings. That doesn't mean you don't try. You need to keep pushing as far as possible. We need a mask law, plain and simple. We're one of 4 states in this country that doesn't have one. That's not okay. It puts our citizens at risk and at risk daily. 2, I don't believe the National Guard should have been called in to handle peaceful protesters. When the looters were there, which are very separate from the protesters, a regular police could have been handled. The use of the National Guard by Evers and the use of pepper spray by our own mayor of our own citizens is unacceptable, and it's something I will never be all right with. And if I missed any, could you please re-ask the parts I missed?
That seemed to be it.
Definitely. Thank you. And then are you supportive of the BDS, which is Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement?
As much as I worry about free speech, yes, I am. The only reason, as a First Amendment, I'm an attorney by trade. I will always worry on speech. That's my attorney in me. I do believe that the Palestinian people are under apartheid. I believe that that divestment needs to happen. I believe in all that. I just do believe in political speech at the same time. The balancing act, it took me a while to get there, but I am in support of that.
Okay. And this is related, it looks like you just partially answered it.
Yep.
Let's get it again. Do you believe that protesting is a form of speech and therefore the right to do so, including BDS and anti-pipeline movements, should not be punished?
I don't believe they should be punished. Our country was founded on revolution. We were founded to fight for ideals, whether they be a tax on representation, tea, land control. It doesn't matter. This form of protest is acceptable. It is allowed, and frankly, it shouldn't be punished. It should be encouraged. I asked for unions that have already endorsed me.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
Peter will ask the listeners
yeah.
here.
The next few questions are mainly technical questions about the campaign. List any unions that have already endorsed you, and which labor endorsements are you currently seeking?
I'm currently seeking the business trade endorsement, SEIU, the firefighters union, MTI. WEAC is not getting involved because it's a 7-person primary. National Organization of Women, which just pulled all their endorsements today because of a conflict with the national office and therefore are not using them, but I did apply for them. That just happened 2 hours ago. And Planned Parenthood, as well as Our Wisconsin Revolution. I consider you both a political group and labor. I have the labor endorsement of Randy Bryce. I am meeting with Andy Jacobson currently to discuss union backing, and I'm waiting to hear back. When I ran for both school board both times, I had MTI's endorsement both times as a solo endorsee. I had the building trades the second time that I ran. I had AFSCME both times, and I had SEIU, I believe, the second time. It might have been the first, and I don't have that in front of me. My mother was a teacher president for WEAC. She was on the national board for WEAC, and she was a teacher president for Rock Valley Teacher Association, and she worked in Whitewater, Wisconsin, and she led that for 10 years. We had union meetings in my basement because they were under a work action. So my house was a block from the school. I delivered Girl Scout cookies and learned labor law when I was 12. I'm the only 12-year-old who knew Robert's Rules of Order backwards and forwards. So it's in the blood.
Yeah, and the next one. Regarding fundraising, how much have you raised for this race to date? And who are your top 3 donors? What percentage of your total is from those top donors?
The top donors, I will have to look, but right now is Thayer Coburn. He's a Democrat out of Whitewater. He was $1,000. Philip Gorman and Mark Spreitzer, they're a married couple. Mark is the head of the Assembly Dems, but he gave separately from his husband, Philip. Philip gave me $250, and Gretchen and Ted Voigt, family friends, gave me $500. Otherwise, there've been lots of small donations. They've added up to a little under 10 grand.
Okay. And kind of how's the percentage from between the top donors, and how much is strictly from small individual donors of less than $50? You know,
the majority, probably about 80%, maybe 90.
And if this is not your first election, maybe school board elections, can you answer this question regarding your last election also? How did that?
The last election also, the largest donor was MTI. That's the both first and second time. The first time though, I did not get money from MTI because my opponent dropped out because his wife was diagnosed with cancer a month after I was endorsed, and so therefore, under the circumstances, I did not seek funding because of that situation. This time I did seek funding.
Thank you. And then number 17. So do you support, you mentioned before, about the legalization of recreational cannabis,
Yes,
including the expungement of all previous cannabis-related charges and release of everybody currently serving time for these charges?
Absolutely. Right now, I've watched my clients who are Black face sentences 4 times higher than clients who are white. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've done juvenile law, I've done adult law, I've done mental health law. And that's the one thing that's been consistent is this is a racialized prosecution and it needs to stop. Additionally, I believe that if it's a nonviolent crime, we need to do expungement. My issue is only if it's a violent crime. If these are nonviolent drug offenses, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't expunge it. People deserve to make mistakes if they have a second chance. Be constantly punished for the same thing in life is rather ridiculous. Plus, the second offense for marijuana is automatically you could get up to 5 years at the highest. Well, I'm sorry. No, not many people get it, but still, you shouldn't have that hanging around your head. You should, the largest number of people going into jail right now, jails and prison, are drug reoffenders. These people need treatment or even recreational uses, but they don't need punishment. This is a no-brainer, and it's clogging our prisons. It's clogging our jails so that dangerous individuals who actually are a threat to public safety are out there when people who are not a threat are being locked up and who are primarily Black, brown, and disabled.
The last question. Do you have paid staff or consultants working in your campaign? And if so, what percentage of your campaign funding goes to paid staff or consultants?
I have exactly 3 people. They are all volunteer. They were my campaign team from school board. 1 is a grad student who just graduated. 1 is a law student who is interning. And 1 is my campaign manager who's working in a family business while helping me out. I have offered him payment. He refuses.
Okay. Just to make clear, you have no paid staff or
None.
consultants, right? Just
0.
all volunteer. Okay, thank you.